The No Kings protests are back on the streets, and George Soros is back in the news. Now, Trump and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent have a plan to kill two birds with one stone. Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. As you can tell from the gray in my beard, I, like all of you, am getting older. And a big part of staying healthy into our old age is exercise. That's why I hope all of you were able to get out this past weekend and get the old blood flowing, whether that's taking a walk, jazzercise, or even some live action role play. Yeah, we're back to the No Kings stuff. I know, deja vu. It was only 4 months ago the last time we covered this. If you want to know who's actually driving these protests, I'd highly suggest checking that one out. But to summarize, No Kings is the product of big money NGOs, nonprofits, and public sector unions. And it recently come to light that No Kings has yet another funding source, a certain prominent individual and his organization. I'll give you exactly one guess. Yep, George Soros and the Open Society Foundations. As stated on the foundation's website, they awarded a $3 million grant to the Indivisible Project, one of the major groups behind No Kings. Honestly, I get it. Soros is 95 years old. He understands better than anybody why it's so important to get the elderly up and moving. Don't let anyone tell you you're too old to join Antifa. But it isn't all just dancing grannies. The Open Society Foundation has links to several much more radical left-wing organizations. Since 2016, Soros' foundation has given as much as $80 million to groups tied to extremist violence. That's according to this report by the Chappell Research Center. Now, Open Society claims that they don't pay, train, or coordinate protests, and that they oppose all forms of violence. That may be true on the surface, but what about the groups Open Society gives money to? That's a whole nother story. Take the Sunrise Movement. It's a supposed climate activist group that spends a lot of time talking about things that have nothing to do with climate change, like reparations and abolishing the police. But they also help other radical groups. In 2023, a group called Stop Cop City attacked a training facility for police and firemen that was being built near Atlanta, Georgia. Protesters hurled bricks, fireworks, and Molotov cocktails at police officers and set fire to construction equipment. These protesters were hit with RICO and domestic terrorism charges, though the RICO charges were eventually dismissed. This came after the Sunrise Movement urged its supporters to donate to fight the charges. Funny, it's not like they're penniless. The Sunrise Movement got around $2 million from, you guessed it, Open Society. And this wasn't just some one-off case. Open Society has given millions to all sorts of extremists, from domestic groups that provide training for riots, property destruction, and economic sabotage, to foreign groups with alleged links to Hamas and the Marxist Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. Now, Trump has floated the idea of RICO charges against Soros and his affiliates.
And we're going to look into Soros because I think it's a RICO case against him and other people.
But as we saw with the Sunrise Foundation and Stop Cop City, getting a RICO case to stick is extremely difficult. It's really designed for dealing with criminal money-making outfits like the mafia. The offenses RICO lays out are mostly things like extortion, bribery, and trafficking, not so much violent political activism. That's why Ted Cruz has suggested expanding the RICO statutes to include things like rioting.
And so I've introduced legislation called the Stop Funders Act that would add rioting to the list of predicate offenses for RICO.
But yeah, good luck with that. Congress can't even get the government back open, let alone pass legislation fundamentally reshaping law enforcement. Instead, the administration appears to be going about this another way. Trump is in the process of completely overhauling the IRS in his bid to go after Soros. Treasury Secretary and Acting Commissioner of the IRS, Scott Bessent, is in charge. It looks like he's going to replace the current chief of the IRS's Criminal Investigations Department with Gary Shapley, one of the agents involved in the investigation against Hunter Biden. But what could the IRS do exactly if RICO is off the table? Well, Trump's allies could try revoking Open Society's tax-exempt status. As Chappell Research states, open society's philanthropy blurs into complicity, fueling groups that celebrate violent uprisings, train militants, and endorse terrorist movements, and that their findings could potentially form the justification for various accountability actions, including revoking of tax-exempt statuses of open society and its guarantees. This would devastate open society. The foundation would be taxed like a corporation instead of a nonprofit. The government could take hundreds of millions of dollars from income taxes, state taxes, taxes on investments, and grants from other entities. And it could be retroactive. If the IRS decides open society was misusing its tax-exempt status for years, the foundation could wind up paying billions in back taxes. But that's not all. Individual donors themselves would lose that tax write-off. The Ford and Rockefeller foundations would be forced to cut ties with open society, and that stream of income is what keeps open society afloat. It would dry up almost immediately. What I'm saying is, don't mess with the IRS. This is the organization that got Al Capone when all other law enforcement failed. Ultimately, if Soros gets taken down, it won't be some flashy arrest. It'll be death by 1,000 paper cuts. But what do you think? Leave your comments below. I do read as many as I can. And please consider supporting America Uncovered at our new website, americauncovered.tv. We can't keep making this show without your help. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thank you for watching America Uncovered.